While I was recording my Vlogmas videos, I talked about this little pouch that I'd seen while I was shopping for some Christmas gifts. It was a beautiful little quilted zipped pouch, and I thought it was lovely and would make a lovely gift. But the price was just a little bit out of my reach. And I thought, do you know what? I bet I can make that. So here's my tutorial of how to make a little quilted pouch. Here's my prototype for the quilted zip pouch, and I have quilted my own fabric. It is all bound. I have zigzag satin stitched my own label on that says made with sparkle, and I've even added a little tassel so it looks like just like the one that you can buy in the gift shop. So if you would like to see what it looks like on the other side, I'll just flip it over for you so you can see what the binding looks like on the other side. And sit back, relax and enjoy my tutorial on how to make your very own quilted zip pouch. So here's what you're going to need. I would make yourself a little cardboard template, and it needs to be 6.5 inches tall and 8 inches wide, and then I put top so that if you're using directional fabric that will help. You may want a little label, that is completely optional. I'm going to show you when I put mine on. And then you'll need a zip. Now it just needs to be longer than 8 inches. I tend to use ones that are a lot longer and cut them down, but as long as yours is at least 8 inches. If you want to use continuous zipper tape, then that's fine. We're going to pop it on in exactly the same way. And then you're going to need your fabric for your pouch. So what I've done is I have cut 2 of my favourite Tilda scraps, and then I have quilted them. So basically I've used some lovely fusible fleece on the inside. I stuck the fusible fleece to one piece of fabric and I glued the other, and then I have quilted it by doing lines. Now what I've done is just lines that are as wide as my zipper foot, but you can do them wide. I mean, this is a project where you just get to go crazy with your creativity. Now my 2 fabric pieces were 12 inches by 14 inches. And then that means that you can then get your 2 templates. So you can get one here and one further on, and you can get them, fit them both in. So that's what you're going to need to do next. You're going to use your template and you're going to cut out your 2 pieces of your quilted fabric. You're going to also need 3 binding pieces. So they're going to need to be about 10 inches long and they need to be 2.5 inches wide. And that is to bind your pouch. So I have cut my 2 pieces, and as you can see, that will become the lining. This will be the outer fabric, but you can equally do it the other way around. Now, when I quilted mine, I decided to use variegated thread because then it kind of looks nice. You can see I used a kind of blue-white variegated thread, and then I ran out and I went to a blue-green variegated thread, but I still think it looks quite lovely. And then if you are going to pop a label on, I am going to use this Perfectly Imperfect because I think it is great. And then I am just going to use a little bit of fabric glue to pop that on. So I use this little basting glue stick to pop it on, and then I'm going to satin stitch all the way around the outside. So there's my lovely little satin stitch all the way around my label, and I just really like the way that it looks. So now we're going to put the zip on. So we're going to call this the right side of the zip, and this is the wrong side of the zip. So we're going to put right sides together. So we'll just bring this down so you can see the top of the pouch, and we're going to put the right sides of the zips together. Now because you can see I've used a zip that's much longer. It's just because I had these zips, I had a big pack of 50 zips, all this size, and I'm just wanting to use them up. But obviously you can do yours to the right size. But the handy thing about doing a bigger one is that means you don't have to worry about this while you're sewing. So you need to line up the top of the zipper tape with the edge of your fabric, like so. And you can make it easier for yourself if you find the middle, because then when you put the other side on, you will find it easier to put the other side on. And then what I'm going to use, I'm going to get my little trusty basting glue again, and I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the top here. And then when I pop my zipper tape on, it just holds it nicely, and then I can add a couple of clips, pins if you prefer, and then I'm going to put my zipper foot on my machine, and then I'm going to sew 1/4 inch all the way along the edge there. Okay, so I have sewn my zip on with 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then what we need to do is we need to fold it up while folding the seam down, because we want that to be facing down rather than facing up, because if it's facing up, when you come to undo the zip, it's going to get in the way. So you want it facing down. You want to give it a press with the iron, and then you either with a little zigzag stitch or just with a top stitch, you want to stitch that down to the facing. Now, if you wanted a neater finish, you could bind that. I am just going to do a little zigzag stitch across there because I quite like the way that it looks. So there I have my zip all popped in. As you can see, I've used a close together zigzag stitch along there. And you just got a nice line. I think it looks quite nice at the front, but what it does at the back is it encloses it all and makes it nice and neat inside. And then you've just got a lovely little, and because I've used the variegated thread, I think it looks quite nice and it matches with the label. And then to do the other side, you just do it in exactly the same way as we've just done this one. So we're going to pop it. So remember, we want it to be that way. So we're going to pop it. If we imagine the finished one will be this way, we then turn it over and sew. Little bit of glue again. Do this one and then finish it in the same way. So here it is with the zip sewn on, and as you can see, I've just got 2 lovely zigzag lines on the inside, and then on the outside again the same effect. So what we need to do now is make it into a pouch. So we're just going to fold it together, right sides together, make sure it's all lined up, put a couple of clips in to hold it in place, and then we need to make sure now that this zipper pull is kind of out of the way. I mean, we're not going to turn this round or anything because we're going to bind it close, but we don't want it getting in the way of the edge. And then again, clip in place, and then we're just going to baste around these 3 sides to keep it together, and then we're going to pop the binding on. So as you can see, I've basted around the edges, and now we want to cut off out any excess zip that you have. I'm using my non-fabric scissors to do this, and just going to cut off along the edge there. So now we do not want to mess with this now, because obviously we don't want to pull the zipper pull off by mistake. If you are using continuous zipper or zip on a roll, now might be the time to put your zipper pull on. So you want to get your binding pieces now, and you want to fold them in half like so, and give them a little press. And what we're going to do is we're going to bind these two sides first and then bind the bottom. So how we're going to bind these two sides is we're going to get our piece folded in half. The open end is going to be lined up against the edge of our pouch, and you must make sure that you have at least 1/2 inch, if not a little bit more, either side, going along either side. It's more important that you have it at the top than the bottom, but I like to have it either side. And then we're going to clip along there, and then we're going to sew down with a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down there. So now you have your binding sewn on, and what I've actually done, I've sewn the binding on both sides at the same time. I like to do that sometimes. If you're going to do the same job twice, I like to do it at the same time. So, and then we're going to finish these edges. So what we need to do is we need to fold it over. This is probably the trickiest bit of the make. Now, we're not going to worry about finishing this edge, because when we put the binding on the bottom, that will finish this edge. So what we're going to concentrate on is finishing this top edge where the zip is. So what we need to do is we need to fold this out, and then I'm going to measure exactly 1 inch up, and I'm just going to cut that off, so like so, and then I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to use this piece to just fold over the zip at the top. Okay, so that covers the zip part there, and then you might want to just pop a clip on so that it'll stay still while you're fiddling. Now, if you find this bit difficult, it might be a good time to get out the basting glue again and just pop a little basting glue on there, and that will help you. But what you then want to do is tightly fold this back over, all the way over like so, and then clip everything in place. So you can see I've clipped that all in place. Now you can see if I am to stitch in the ditch here, you can see, because the way it's folded over, you are going to catch it on both sides. So we can just come along here and we can stitch along this line, and then that will catch it in on the other side. So we're going to sew along here, sew along here, and then we're going to bind the bottom. So here you have the binding on, and as you can see at the top, it's kind of nicely enclosed the zipper top. You do end up with a little bit of the edge here, but I think maybe if I played around a little bit with the size of the binding, I could get that a little bit tighter. So now what we need to do is chop off the excess here and here, and we're going to bind the bottom. So to bind the bottom, we get our strip. I'm using different strips. I'm just scrappy binding this, and then we pop again, leaving a little bit over the edge on both sides, and then sew along here. So we're going to finish these ends in exactly the same way as we covered the zip to keep it all nice and neat. So we're going to pull it over, flip it over, fold this end in, fold the other end in. A little bit of glue or 18 hands will help, and then you just flip this over and sew as you did before. So here you have the lovely, perfectly imperfect patchwork quilted pouch. All of the prettiness and not all of the price. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe for more inspiration. I've been Sam from So Let's Sparkle with Sam. Don't forget to sparkle. Bye for now.